Lee, how are you? I see you're on mute.
Yeah. Hey, Bradley.
Hey. Welcome to everybody joining. We'll be starting in just a few minutes, just to give everybody a chance to get on in here. But Lee, I went ahead and made you a panelist. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Bradley?
I'm doing fine. Doing fine. Thank you for being part of this with us.
Very excited. Thank you for the invite.
So we'll kill a little bit of time here, and we'll start right at the top of the hour. But I just wanted to get you in here and get you settled and make sure. Never a bad thing to confirm that things work on the internet.
For sure, for sure. You can never do too much testing.
I put out the call. I didn't realize it showed us sold out this morning. We got a pretty good group. We'll let people get in. Of course, what we've seen is most people join right after the top of the hour. So we'll give people a chance to get on in here. I'm going to put myself on mute. I will be back in just a couple of minutes.
Okay. Great.
And everyone can hear you, by the way, just side note.
Yeah, let me just practice the screen sharing for a second, make sure that all works. So I'll just take control.
Yeah, so all you need to do is on the bottom, look for that. And the key there, Lee, is that if you've got audio in your presentation at any point, there's a thing that you've got to click when you do the screen sharing that says like something like allow computer audio.
Right. Yeah, I'm avoiding that.
Okay. All right.
Yes, that's a good tip. I wish I knew it last time I did one of these. All right. But you're able to see my...
Yes.
Okay.
We can see
perfect.
your screen, and your PowerPoint now is in presentation mode, and it's looking good.
Okay. Awesome.
And for those joining the Zoom, we will start right around the top of the hour. You're here a little bit early, but we will be underway in about 5 minutes. Lee, where are you based?
I am 30 minutes outside of New York City.
Okay.
So I'm in Westchester County.
There you go.
Yeah. And you're down in Nashville, right?
Yeah, in Nashville, Tennessee. So it's been interesting. So we have what's called the Tennessee Pledge, where a lot of things have opened again, and it's interesting to see. It's controversial, of course, but it's there's data being gathered, and some of it's good, some of it's not. We're living in interesting times.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of pent up energy to listen to some good music.
Yeah. Yes. Always. Yeah. To be a musician in Nashville, you got to be in the top 99.99 percentile. So I will say this too, as people start coming on in the Zoom, take note of the Q&A function below. I will be keeping an eye on what is said in the chat for numerous reasons, most of them obvious. But if you have a question for either one of the speakers today, please use the Q&A function of Zoom. Also, as a side note, everybody who's registered, just like DBW FM last week, everybody who is registered for this today will get copies of the audio and the video files for later viewing. It ought to be, if not by tomorrow, then certainly by the first part of next week. I'll take a look. Okay, I see Jason from Publishers Weekly is here. That's good. Okay. Yeah, we'll give it a couple more minutes, Lee, and then we'll kick this thing right on off. And I guess it's good to stay on time if you're doing a webinar.
I was on two sort of virtual social activities yesterday. One went for an hour and a half and had live music. It actually had two performers, like a pianist and a guitarist, and then one that went for 3 hours. It was a marathon, but it was good. It was good. So
we had an event that we were scheduled to do. So we do a lot of events. Digital Book World is one of them, and a lot of them are in the voice and AI space. And so we had an event that was supposed to be a sold-out event in San Jose at the beginning of April. Well, sold-out events in San Jose at the beginning of April weren't allowed, so we had to turn it into a virtual event, and a lot more people were able to attend. That was a good thing, but it was well received. But the thing about it was, it ended up being a 2-day event. The first day we had 9 straight hours of programming, in which I sat in this seat right here for 9 hours. The second day was 5 hours, and people liked it, but I wouldn't. I'm not dying to do that again.
That's a marathon.
It is. It's a commitment. It's a commitment to the community. That's how I phrased it. But yeah, we're a lot of people experimenting with a lot of things. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But you do what you can do. We'll go ahead and kick this thing off. We've got a tight schedule. We want to make sure we respect everybody's time. In the unending sea of webinars, we want to be the one that gets you out on time. So welcome to DBW AI. My name is Bradley Metrock. I'm CEO of a company called Score Publishing based in Nashville, Tennessee. We're not a normal publisher by any stretch, but that's for another day. We own and operate Digital Book World, which is the gathering of the wide world of publishing. You'll want to keep your eye out on Monday. We've got a very interesting announcement in terms of Digital Book World 2020 in September that you won't want to miss. So I'll tease that a little bit. I'm not going to spoil it here. Very pleased to have 2 phenomenal speakers join us to take a look at the current and the future of AI-driven publishing and storytelling. And our keynote is Huang, who has done just a very lengthy and impressive resume in the nexus of publishing and technology. Worked for NBCUniversal, worked for Nielsen, worked for Hachette, and honored to have you join us, Lee. Thank you for being part of this with us. And with that, I'm going to shut up and let you get to business.
Terrific. So thank you, Bradley. I hope everyone is safe and doing well. It's really a pleasure to be here today, really to talk with everyone about how AI is transforming publishing and storytelling. Let me just take control of the screen, and I will bring up the PowerPoint, and we will get going. Bradley, everything looks okay?
Everything looks great.
Terrific. Okay. So, the pace at which AI technology is evolving it's mind-boggling. It really is. And the acceleration of its use to transform how we live, how we work, and how we do business together is just going to continue to accelerate. And the speed of the transformation and the use of AI, it is really quite overwhelming. Every day I'm just talking to more and more companies that are implementing AI platforms and solutions that are transforming all industries and also disrupting many of them. So it is a bit of a cliche, but the future really is now. I'd like to just start by asking everyone to close their eyes. Okay, so just close your eyes just for a moment and use your imagination. So with your eyes closed, just imagine the future of storytelling. Imagine new ways that you can bring the characters from your stories and the worlds that they inhabit to life for readers and fans of all of your great authors. Imagine more effective ways for customers to discover your books and simultaneously enabling you to better understand their behaviors. And lastly, imagine if you could increase sales by not working harder, but by working smarter, because you have actionable data that you can really use right at your fingertips. Okay, so please open your eyes. Now, Imagine a world where Sylvester Stallone starred in The Terminator instead of Arnold Schwarzenegger. So we live in this world already because AI can make this film. Imagine a world where there are self-driving cars powered by AI. So we'll soon be living in this world. And one natural question is, well, what will the driver be doing with all of their free time if they're not driving? Imagine a world where art and beautiful images are created by AI. If you look at these images on the screen and these pieces of art, these are all created by AI. So the question is, how can we leverage this capability to create new opportunities? Imagine Beethoven's unfinished 10th symphony being completed by an AI program. So this project is already underway. Imagine a world where AI is reviewing resumes and conducting interviews. And for those who are in HR, this is already happening. But imagine a world where with robots like Sophia here, and the different types of interviews that they could conduct. And you don't need to imagine AI-powered robots in our warehouses, because I think we all know they're there and they are just expanding. So the future really is already here. And when you look at this, this set of examples, you can either see these as opportunities for publishers in storytelling like I do, or frankly, you can try to ignore it. But if you ignore it, the change is still going to happen. And again, it is accelerating. So the use of AI is clearly tied to innovation. And every organization has their own approach and DNA for innovating and using emerging technology and increasing their use of data to seize opportunities, to drive productivity, increase efficiencies. And some are proactive, some are more deliberate, and they innovate when there's a reaction to an outside factor or an underlying fear. So at the end of the day, that's up to the organization on sort of their DNA and their culture, but really you need to be actively innovating in some way, shape, or form if you're not already. So Netflix, for example, when they look at who their competitors are, they basically look at, really any type of company that people are spending time engaging content with. So certainly they look at Hulu and Disney Plus as competitors, but they look at Fortnite as a big competitor, right? Because when you're playing a game, you're not watching Netflix. So for them, they have an obsession with Fortnite. So if you think about from a book publishing perspective, certainly you have competitive houses, but really all entertainment platforms are your competitor, and you need to keep that in mind. Loss of, I think this might be behind the camera, but loss of franchise authors, right? The bread and butter of many companies, franchise authors may retire, they may go to another publishing house, their quality may go down. So the question is, how do you efficiently and effectively find the next great author or the next great authors or the next hot topic? So, that may motivate some companies to again, explore new solutions. Then you have Amazon, which is obviously, they've got their publishing house, so they're a direct competitor. They have obviously direct understanding of all the customers and their behavior and handling sales, but they also are dictating terms which impact profitability. So that might spur companies to, again, to innovate. And then lastly, COVID has been a big driver. So I think, COVID has just really accelerated innovation and use of new technologies in many industries. And I think one area in the publishing side is that I know for many of us probably online today, we've wanted to take physical online author events, at Barnes and Noble and other stores, and bring them online, stream it, archive it, leverage it, get data, monetize it. It's been slow going, I think, in many cases, but with COVID, I think it's accelerated virtual author tours. So in that way, I think that's driven some innovation faster than it otherwise would have happened. So, you know, really it's up to, you know, your business on how you want to think about it, how you will survive, how you will grow. But at the end of the day, AI can be a very key ingredient for achieving success. So what exactly is AI? So AI, at a high level, right, it's the ability of a computer program to function like a human brain, right? It can replicate humans, it can think like humans, behave like humans, and ultimately it can think and learn on its own. But the big difference is that AI can perform tasks and calculations at massive scale and speeds, right? That far exceeds human ability. So I think this is a pretty good sort of definition of AI. And a lot of people always ask, well, you know, are robots and AI going to take over the world? Is, you know, the apocalypse in the future? You know, will the next big bestseller be written by AI? It's also a reference in terms of where we are in the human timeline. So in the AI world, there are sort of three categories of AI, if you will, and its capabilities. The first is where we are now, which is narrow AI. So this is where technology, AI performs very specific functions, right? It can move a pallet from one place to another or do certain calculations, but it's very specific. Second is general AI, and this is where with the AI and robots can start to really work like humans. They can multitask, work in different, you know, subject matter areas, kind of like R2-D2. And then there is a third category of super AI, which is when you think Skynet and really sort of creating sentient machines. That's you know, that's down the road, but it is on the path. So these are sort of the three categories to help put this in a bit of context. Now, you know, the goal of AI isn't for a company to say, hey, we're using AI, right? And we've declared victory. It is not to say, you know, we have AI as, you know, a core component of our business. That's not the goal. The goal is to think about really what business objectives do you want to achieve, and that AI is a tool. So AI, the analogy I like to give is that AI is like a hammer. So if you think about a hammer, you can use it to create a house, right? But you can use it to demolish a house. You can use a hammer to protect yourself if someone's, you know, attacking you, or you can use a hammer to save somebody's life if they're stuck in a car. And frankly, you can even use a hammer for entertainment. If you're a juggler, this guy's got 3 hammers, so he's entertaining people. So the hammer is just a tool that you apply to achieve your specific goal. And that is what companies and publishers need to do. So when you think about then a publisher and the life cycle of a book, right? There's a lot of steps in the workflow. It's very complex, starting with agents and acquisitions, the editorial, cover design, you know, marketing, publicity, sales, it goes on and on. In addition to creating a book, there are obviously new products that should be created from the assets that a publisher has. You're thinking about new ways to engage in online stores as well as physical stores and opportunities to tie the two together. And obviously there's the need to better understand your customer. So if you think about it, it's a huge ecosystem. So where do you start, right? You don't just say, hey, I'm going to apply AI to all of these. So how do you get going? So, you know, along my way of just working with companies, I've created an AI framework to help put some structure on how to determine where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck in terms of AI. And I'm just going to give a top line of this. I'm going to give a lot of examples. So the framework is called CAPA. Okay, so C is content creation. Where in the workflow and the publishing ecosystem and storytelling ecosystem can you use AI to create new content? Okay, and again, we'll drill down on this. Second is, how can you use AI and data to get answers that you could never get before and get much more accurate predictions so that you can de-risk investments that you're making and increase your odds of success. And then A is automation, which is how can you use AI to automate tasks that could save people time? And just as importantly, there are probably things that people within your organization say, I wish I had time to do this. So with AI, it may again have a solution where I can perform tasks that are on the we would like to do list, but now you can actually do it. All right, so so the question is, again, as I mentioned before, common was, so can AI write a book? Can it write a book, a bestseller? So take just a few seconds and read this. Life in the Time of Coronavirus at 8:45, etc. So this was written by an AI program, okay? So this was produced by GPT-2, which is an AI algorithm built by OpenAI. I'm sure some of you have used it. It's pretty interesting, I think, right? So this came out of AI. Here is a poem which was produced by AI, and this was submitted by a college student at a pretty well-known university to the oldest student, one of the nation's oldest student-run literary journals. He submitted this. He didn't say AI had written it. He just submitted it, so everyone thought it was a human, and it got published. And this was written and published in 2011. Okay. All right, so the World Economic Forum, and I think this was in 2017, they did a survey of over 350 AI experts. And you'll see they were trying to predict when certain things would happen, when AI would be able to mimic humans, if you will. So of note would be 2026, about 5-6 short years from now, that AI will be able to produce a high school essay that is so well written that teachers would not be able to, they would think a human wrote it and that they would give it like an A, okay? So think of that as a milestone, AI producing, high quality essays. And then they predict in 2049 that it will write the New York Times bestseller, okay? So you could go plus minus 5 years, plus minus 10 years, however much variability you want to give it statistically. But the fact is, it will happen, okay? But in the here and now, and certainly for the foreseeable future, when it comes to content creation, people need to be thinking of the AI as being your collaborator, your partner in crime. Use it again as a tool. So this is just an article from from an author. And as you can see, they wrote, I don't think it's going to write a great novel anytime soon, but I can use it basically to get through writer's block, right? And get some new ideas. So it's a tool, okay? Okay, story analysis. So a lot of books have series, right? 2 books, 3 books, 4 books, and you want to ensure consistency of your characters from, book to book, right? And you want consistency, and sometimes you may want to change up a character, right? Maybe in the 3rd book, they're meaner than they used to be. But through analyzing stories in the actual text of the manuscript, you can use the tool, AI tools, to say, hey, this is meeting your objective or this isn't. Same thing for book to film adaptations, right? Like I won't talk about my favorite sci-fi ones, but suffice to say, a lot of books are going to film, and you want to know if the characteristics of your key characters are being brought through, to the big screen or onto one of the streaming services, right? So AI can do that. You can also compare against comps. So we're not talking sales comps here, we're talking about comps of stories. So if you want your story to be like X book and have X theme and have X gender breakdown and have X emotionality, the AI can do it, and it's objective. So everything is consistent when looking at it. So this isn't to say that AI should be replacing creatives. Absolutely not. This is just saying that the tool can help creatives and publishers really understand their product and see if it meets the market that they're intending or the themes that they're intending, because at the end of the day, you do have to make money. So this is where the creative has tools to help them, hit their target. So a lot of people ask me, this is really cool, like who does this? So I'll just mention one name, which is a company called StoryFit. They do this type of analysis, and it's really, really cool. Okay, so just because a lot of people ask me that. Next, so it is that AI is creating content in books, right? So Springer Nature, some of you probably know about this. They published the first machine-generated book. And they did this by going through their archives and using AI to write a summary, of their huge, archives of information, and it published it, and they gave it credit. Okay, so this is, again, sort of summarizing, recapping, not necessarily original content, but it's a start, and it's a book, and it's for sale, and bringing in money. Now, AI is already also being used in magazines and the newspaper industries to generate original content. A lot of the content that's being produced from them is formulaic. So, for example, you're reporting on a baseball game or football game. The articles are very structured, right? They're sort of like a template. Same thing if you're doing like a financial services article, reporting on earnings. So they use that to automatically generate content. But again, just thinking about how you apply AI as a tool to different goals. So, every company has sales reports. There are lots of diagrams and charts and pie charts and, all sorts of things that, frankly, just from what people have told me, a lot of people don't really understand it. They really don't know what it means. But by using this AI technology, there are technologies that can analyze the data and translate it into sales narratives and plain English stories. So when you see, revenue growing or expenses increasing, it's all written in English that people can easily read and understand. So just another use. Voice. So clearly, digital audio is going through the roof, but with voice technology, I mean, to me, no brainer, use it for backlists. Right? Things that are sitting there, it's just money waiting to be made. And with the quality of natural voice that's available, with deep voice, which is actually when you can replicate a speaker's voice, should just go at it. You can use it to personalize your audiobook. So one of the ideas I've always thought would be kind of cool is if you could personalize audiobooks, right? So you could replace characters' names, personalize it, give it to somebody with their birthday, and their name is in the audiobook. I think that'd be pretty cool. Alexa skills, I know some people have tested them, mixed results, but at the end of the day, I think if you look at those as extensions of the book, not necessarily just for marketing or driving sales, but to increase the ecosystem of your characters, Alexa skills can certainly be part of the arsenal. Events. Events can transcribe. It's got things called diarization, where if you've got multiple speakers, they can determine who's speaking and assign, who said what. So Bradley, I've got some ideas on this. Maybe we can talk about it. And then also it can evaluate students. So for those education publishers, if you're learning Chinese, not an easy language, you can use, voice experiences to get feedback on whether you pronounce the word correctly or not, and it's tied to a book, right? So, I mean, these are just all products. I'm going to show just, wow, time flies. It's 12:23. Okay, I'm going to show just a couple of quick examples of AR, augmented reality, which for those who know me know I love. But these are some more interesting ones that combine sort of AI with AR with data. So audio doesn't really play well on this. So I just give this as a setup. So if you look at this, this screen here, this picture a piece of paper, which is what this is, and a child just wrote what you see here. So you see it refers to a giant penguin, it refers to ninjas, a capital, right? A king who enjoys running from coast to coast. Okay, so they just wrote that on this piece of paper. They've got their phone up, and I'm just going to go to YouTube and kind of show how this works, right? So this was what they just wrote. And you'll see a penguin, you'll see a king, a capital, and you'll see the king running around. Okay, so what was written came to life. So again, just think about how you could apply this to a book, or an educational book. The other one I wanted to show is sort of a cool thing with retail. So some of you, know that I'd launched some AR for some books that we launched at Comic-Con, which is really cool. That was a lot of fun. But this takes it to the next level, and I thought it would be worth showing people. right? So you can see just with some gestures, he put a like to it, likes this book, just drags it down and gets more reviews. Okay, so just again, pretty neat. And these experiences are available. Okay, so to go back to the main PowerPoint. Okay, so another example I like to share, and this is something I personally am really proud of. When I worked at Nielsen Media, you know, we owned a lot of magazines and trade shows. So we owned Billboard, Hollywood Reporter, and Adweek, but we also owned magazines like Convenience Store News, a variety of industries. And what I wanted to do, my goal was, you know, I handled all the digital strategy and the websites, but I wanted to create new products is really what I wanted to do. And I wanted to leverage all the assets that we had to automatically create new digital businesses because I knew we wouldn't be able to get staff for it. So we had all of our content from all of our magazines in a single repository, in a single database. I applied an AI machine learning program against this. So we had natural language processing, semantic analysis, we had a taxonomy, I mean, all that fun stuff. And we quickly saw, you know, key buckets of information that we had. So we launched a website, a digital business about branded entertainment, which is basically product placement, because we had information about Adweek, right, from Madison Avenue that would be paying for product placement, right? Hollywood Reporter would write about product placement. So why does Simon Cowell have a Coke in his hand on American Idol as opposed to a Pepsi? Because that was a branded entertainment deal. And then we had Billboard because there was a lot of music involved with placement. But then we had Convenience Store News, which actually had sales from retailers like 7-Eleven. So we could have articles to say, hey, Shaquille O'Neal did a branded entertainment deal with this product, let's say Pepsi, in this movie, and the second came out, we sold, you know, 20% more units in convenience store. So we could go from end to end because we were able to process the data, and we did the same for video games. So my point here is that for publishers, to me, you know, and I know I've spoken with a few people and they agree, this is just a huge opportunity, right? Publishers have all of this content. You know, some are very bite-sized. It's just, they're just waiting there to be repackaged, repurposed, and monetized. Creating covers. So this is just an example where left is a cover, my face, and there is my face merged with the cover. Easy to do. Think about all the fun that one could have with personalizing covers, with different experiences they could do for kids or fans. I mean, just kind of endless. Digital celebrities. So if you're looking at this character, Michaela, you may think she's a real human, but if you maybe, you know, stick your face a little closer to the screen, you'll see this is a digital character who has 2.2 million followers on Instagram and is a business in of herself. So I like to share this because all of you have, you know, you may have a lot of characters that could be brought to life digitally. And the fact is, since the technology has evolved a lot, the costs are a lot lower than maybe what you thought 5 or 10 years ago. So what wasn't doable back then might be doable now. All right, I'm gonna kind of accelerate a bit. All right, slush pile. So this gets into automation. So this is, again, a thing I think a lot of people think that there's an opportunity here. So my favorite story that I heard was about an author who let's say on Tuesday, received a rejection letter for an unsolicited manuscript that they sent into a publisher. The next day, they received an acceptance letter. Woohoo, psych. Went on to publish the book, became a bestseller. And along the way, she asked, well, why did I get a rejection and then an acceptance? And it was because the first day, an editorial assistant picked up her manuscript off the slush pile, looked at it, didn't like it, should have thrown it away, but accidentally put it back on top of the slush pile. Next day, another editorial assistant came, looked at it, liked it, and the rest is history. So, you know, the point is, yeah, you have a slush pile, 99%, if you're accepting them. Okay, I know some publishers don't. 99% will be garbage, but somewhere in there is a piece of gold that could become a bestseller, and AI can kind of sift through all of that for you. Keywords, again, you know, the AI can just increase the quality of your keywords and increase discoverability. I'm just going to speed up here a little bit just in time. recommendations, right? Key. I mean, there are just many new techniques leveraging all the data that's available to really increase conversion rates. Chatbots. I think chatbots at this point, these are still early days, right? I know they're really pretty frustrating when you're trying to use a chatbot. People still prefer to talk to a human, but they will improve. And this type of technology can be used for a lot of purposes. This one I do want to spend a second on, which is events. So this was an event actually that I live streamed at Barnes & Noble for a publisher. And you can see it was really successful with all the loves and likes and ha-has. But imagine if you use body gestures and motion detection technology. So you can survey the audience in real time. So if you've got 200 people in the audience, you can see who's sleeping, who's awake, who's nodding off, who's smiling, who's really engaged. Then you can track to see who went up and got their book signed. You can track to see who, after the event ended, went into the aisle that the author has their books in to maybe pick up another book. It's just amazing what can be done with this. So I think this is a big opportunity to work with retailers on. Sales, obviously, right? Predictive analytics is positive returns. You can use it for auctions. So this was one of the first apps I built, which was to try and increase your odds of winning an auction, right? Most people will say, oh, well, whoever offers the most will win the auction. Yeah, that is certainly true in many cases, but not all cases. Sometimes it's those with the best social media campaign or some other factors. And certainly those are evolving as authors, put different priorities on different things. So AI and data can help with that. Who's next? How do you identify who the next great author is? So out of all these people, who's the one? Well, you could be leveraging data from YouTube and a lot of social platforms and track trending information and comments and things so that you can identify prospects who are on the way up, sign them before they reach their peak, so you get them at a good price, and then take it from there. So AI can help deliver, the next author. So the last two slides is, it's not easy, right? I mean, you've got to have clear goals. You have to get a lot of departments, business, IT, legal, et cetera, aligned. There's new perspectives and questions to ask in terms of getting, asking the right questions to get the right answer. Technology vendors, you've got data and training sets. There's a lot of change management changes and processes that you have to go through. So it's not easy. At the end of the day, you need a leader with a holistic view who understands everything above and can organize it. And then ideally there's executive level support as well. But it's worth it for all of these 10 reasons, whether you want to think of it as revenue growth or just marketing or saving dollars, gaining competitive advantage, doing these things. Some of them will really strengthen your relationships with authors and retailers, so you're differentiated. So it is worth it. And again, it's not like you have to do it for your entire company at once. Pick a goal, pick a department, pick a solution that will bring some good bang for the buck that can, you can get out the door pretty quickly as maybe an initial prototype, but it's just important to get going. And at the end of the day, right, the goal that we, all publishers have and storytellers is just create amazing experiences. And so whether it's on the creative side to extend the story and the characters from the physical into the digital, or on the operational and publishing side, I think AI can really help achieve the ultimate goal. So, so thank you. I'm sorry I had to speak pretty quickly, but I hope it was interesting. This is my contact info. Reach out to me if you need help with anything, if you want to just shoot the breeze about any of these technologies or solutions. I just love to talk. And finally, just as an FYI, because I mentioned that it is important to have a leader who understands the business and the tech to lead these types of initiatives. I am giving a workshop tomorrow titled Why You Need Bruce Lee to Lead Your Innovation Program. And it just covers how Bruce Lee was an innovator, and his values and how he achieved success, and how they directly correlate to people who are leading innovation and change within their organizations. So if you're interested, give me a call. Should be a lot of fun. So,
Lee, great job. Yeah, really, really good. And thank you for being part of DBW AI with us. If you want to post that link to the workshop in the chat of the Zoom, I'll take that and retweet that out with Digital Book World's account, so as many people as possible can see that. Okay,
terrific. Will do.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. I'll bring Jason Boog of Publishers Weekly in just a moment, but I'm intrigued by you touched on the content that basically piles up and piles up and piles up, and the idea of AI being able to parse that and create new businesses out of it. I think there's a huge opportunity, not just in some of the things you mentioned, but also in podcasting. I would love for some AI company to exist, and hopefully Story fits in here listening to this, so they can do it or someone else can do it, but some company to create some sort of algorithm or AI that will go through and troll podcasts, and when you hit 25, you hit 50, you hit 100, maybe it's got some algorithm that can cull your greatest hits together, take this quote or take that quote and have ways to analyze and see that they were good, and then just pop up in the middle of nowhere with an email and say, hey, congratulations on hitting your 100th episode. Here's a greatest hits episode we just created from all of your previous stuff. You want to use it? That's going to be $49.99.
Yep.
Or something like that. I'm excited about the future, and you did a great job of presenting it.
Terrific. I'm with you. I mean, it's limitless, but it's just a matter of having some smart ideas, right? Partnering with the technology and then start doing it. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you.
Lee, we appreciate you. Don't forget to post the link to your workshop in the chat, and I'll tweet that out. So I will return you to an attendee here. And Jason Boog of Publishers Weekly, who is next up, and our second of two speakers. I'm going to promote you to panelist. Jason, how are you? And you are muted.
Yep. Hello.
Hello. And we can hear you. Now we can see you. Jason, how are you?
Hi. I'm really good. It's excellent to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being part of this with us. So, Jason, you work with Publishers Weekly. I will be quiet, my preferred role I've discovered, and let you get to it. Just introduce yourself and I'll let you get right on into it. Do you need help sharing the screen? Do you have video as part of your, do you have audio as part of your talk?
No, just we're just gonna have a slide deck here. So I'm gonna pull that up so everybody can see it. And I think we should be good. Here we go. All right, can everyone see the first slide? Or is
you're in presenter view. You may want to just go to play from first slide.
Yeah, we're going to play from first slide. Great.
Yeah, right there. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going on mute. Jason, thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be here. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to this webinar. I know everyone's time's of a premium right now in this really difficult time. But I'm really excited to talk about this. This is one of my favorite topics. And it all began, as Bradley said, I'm the West Coast correspondent for Publishers Weekly. And last year, since I'm on the West Coast, I hear a lot about artificial intelligence and things that are going on there. So I spent a few months kind of just reporting how different writers out here and publishers are using artificial intelligence in their day-to-day creation. And I found a lot of really interesting things, and I'm just going to share some of that with you today. The first thing I want to talk about is every year in November, there's a coding event among coders called National Novel Generation Month. And in the month of November, coders around the world try to generate a 50,000 word novel using artificial intelligence of some sort. That fascinated me. I jumped and just started interviewing all of the people that were working in it. And the most amazing thing that I discovered during the process of reporting that story was, yes, the technology's here already. Lee showed that excellent survey where different AI researchers were talking about the different milestones that we'll hit with artificial intelligence. And sometimes it seems pretty distant when artificial intelligence would be writing a term paper or writing a novel. But these people are actually working with these tools. They've been doing it for many years, and they've been generating 50,000 words year after year. And the technology keeps getting better and better. And as I was talking to them, the person who founded this program, he said, it's really stuck with me. He said, it's like the early days of Photoshop for graphic designers right now. For the publishing industry. We shouldn't think about it as something that's untouchable or in the future, or something that we can't use right now. The tools are here, it's just we're figuring out how to use them. And there's a small group of people who have learned how to start experimenting with them. So after spending some time with those people, I realized how easy it was. And I think if there's one message, one theme you can take away from the presentation is it's easier than you think, and you should start experimenting with these tools now, because we are at that moment when we have the tools that can work with text and can work with writing, just like Photoshop helps us work with graphic design. Those tools are here now, and in a few years, they're going to be everywhere. And so I think now is the time to start playing with them. So just to illustrate how easy it is, after interviewing all of the main players in this National Novel Generation Month, I decided to take the challenge myself. And after a month of hard work, mainly the hardest thing was building a data set. I just collected a whole bunch of writing that I admired, put it together in a data set, and then plugged it into the GPT-2 language model. And I was able to use that to generate hundreds of thousands of words. Most of it was, it was all interesting, but most of it was incomprehensible. But the thing is after reading through it, I was able to find a few really amazing pieces of writing that were actually coherent. And so I'm going to show you my favorite piece of writing that came out of this experiment. And I did this all on my laptop at home. There's no special technology, no special coding needed. If you click on the they'll share my presentation with you later. And if you click on the hyperlink at the top of this page, you will actually be able to see an article I wrote showing you how to do it step by step. You could be doing this tonight if you wanted to, if you just follow the simple steps. And so here, I called it A Portrait of the Artist as a Young AI. And this is just one piece of writing that came out of that experiment that I took. And this was all written by AI. I asked my parents for advice. They are at odds whether or not I should go to the upcoming poetry contest. I grumbled at first, but I started to take action anyways. I asked my father for some of his old writing supplies, and he happily lent them to me. From that point forward, I took to spending my days in the studio perfecting my craft. However, as the week passed by, it became increasingly difficult to stay focused on my goal. I turned to alcohol and illegal drugs and found that instead of relaxing and reflecting, my thoughts grew more chaotic and my actions more destructive. When the judges arrived to hear the poem written by me, I was left with a bittersweet smile on my face. I was proud of myself for taking the challenge, and I wanted to continue this legacy and become a renowned poet. The thing that I love about this piece of writing is the AI, after I had given it many, many samples of great writing, very simple, concise writing that followed a formula, it was able to produce a hero's journey. So if you look at that first paragraph, you have a character who's looking for advice, who wants to accomplish something. They want to go to the poetry contest. And then the next paragraph, you have that character's struggle to go achieve that. And they get sidelined by alcohol and illegal drugs, and their life becomes chaotic. But then by the third paragraph, you have the resolution. They reach the end of their hero's journey and they accomplish what they want, and you see them moving forward into the future. So by feeding this language model, this very simple AI, it's a very narrow AI to use Lee's term, I was able to get a very simple piece of writing that sketched a complete story. And it just makes me really excited whenever I think about this, and you could be doing this too. These tools are very simple. And as I said, if you just click the hyperlink up there by A Portrait as a Young Man, you will be able to click to an essay I wrote that has step-by-step instructions for making your own language model and feeding it whatever data set you want to make something like this. And I urge everyone to try it. It's a great thing. It's a great skill to have at this moment, and I think you'll be surprised by how far things have come. There's a lot of different ways that artists have been using it. One of the most vocal and most well-known people right now is Janelle. Is right here. You can see it's called Naming Spaceships, and this is this was done by Janelle Shane. She's an author and an AI researcher. And what she did is she took the names of spaceships from a very famous science fiction series written by Ian Banks called the Culture series. And they have many great names for the spaceships. They're all funny. And all of the spaceships are steered by AI. So some of the names from the book are Irregular Apocalypse, Nervous Energy, Prosthetic Conscience, and No More Mr. Nice Guy. She took a whole data set of all of those different names, fed them to another language model, and that AI started creating its own names. And then there you can see these different spaceship names that she created. Some of them are funny, some of them are silly, but they're all interesting. And it also brings up a lot of copyright questions for the publishing industry here too, as well. And we'll come back to this a few times, but these are all names that are completely unique, but they were created based and inspired by a very specific author's work. And I don't think anyone's going to be wanting to read a book about ass federation at this point, but at the same time, it's something that the publishing industry is going to have to think about. When anyone can create a data set, when anyone can take their favorite author's work, put it into a data set, and then start putting out work that sounds and emulates that author's work, what does that mean? It's going to be a question that we all have to face in coming years. And once again, if you click on the link up there, you can see more about Janelle and her work. I interviewed her for this article. She's tremendously interesting and has a great book about this topic as well. This is Star Sonnet. This is, so this was created by a poet and an AI researcher whose name is, who has been working at this for a very long time, Allison Parrish. She teaches at NYU. And what she did here was take summaries of movies that were written on Rotten Tomatoes. She took those summaries of movies and then took a huge corpus of 3 million public domain texts and used them to map words, groups of words that were similar to the words that were there, that were mentioned in the movie description. So this was a description of Star Wars, the summary, what you would see on the crawl, and she replaced all of those words with similar sounding phrases, similar sounding words, and wrote an entirely new poem that sort of follows the plot of Star Wars very loosely. But once again, we are entering some really interesting copyright territory, because here we have an author who is taking both a story that George Lucas created and is copyrighted, and then taken 3 million texts and use them. They're all public domain, so she stays out of that problem. But the same way someone would use a filter on Photoshop to change the tone of a picture, she can change the tone of a piece of text. She can look at Star Wars and say, I want this to sound more like an old-fashioned poem. And suddenly you have an old-fashioned poem about Star Wars. So this is another really interesting application of AI in writing right now. This is Robin Sloan, who's a very popular novelist, and he took a few hundred of his favorite fantasy novels, created a data set that put them all together, and using that data set, he was able to make customized fantasy stories for every single one of his newsletter subscribers. So he wrote thousands of these personalized stories that that turned his newsletter subscribers into adventure characters and put them in an adventure. And all of the words and all of the way this AI tells a story, it learned from 100 of the most famous and favorite fantasy novels that Robin had in his collection, and it spits out something completely new. There's no way you could plug. I tried actually. If you plug what this AI wrote into a plagiarism detector, it's never going to. There is no direct plagiarism here. It's just it writes in the style of those writers. And the creators of GPT-2 did this with the work of J.R.R. Tolkien as well. And they were able to generate pages and pages of new text that sound exactly like Tolkien, but they were not written by Tolkien. So once again, we are going to run into some serious copyright questions in a few years when this technology has when it can reach the level of creating a new story that makes sense. And you have something that sounds a lot like Tolkien and makes readers of Tolkien feel happy, like they've read a new Tolkien book. It's going to cause a lot of questions and a lot of problems, and I think it's good to start thinking about it now before it becomes a bigger issue. And then you can also do AI generated nonfiction. I work with Film Threat magazine. And so I created them their own language model, a very simple AI that could write movie reviews. I fed the movie review bot. I gave it thousands and thousands of reviews that we pulled from Rotten Tomatoes. And then suddenly we had this bot that could write a very simple one paragraph description of a movie. It never saw the movie, so it's not describing the movie itself, but when you read it, you would think that it was written by a human being, maybe a crazy human being, but it's a human being. So here's how it wrote about Pedro Almodovar's Pain and Glory. It's a movie by Spanish director Pedro Almodovar that's filled with beautiful moments and some of the most intense, beautiful scenes I've seen in a long time. The last act is nearly nonstop action and big explosions. It's epic, awesome, and bloody awesome. Feels like a cross between The Matrix Reloaded, and Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. So that review was completely AI generated. It would never, if you've seen the movie, you know it's completely, that description does not describe the movie in any way, shape, or form. And it's kind of funny to think about that. But at the same time, if I had wanted to promote my favorite book on Amazon or my favorite movie on Rotten Tomatoes, I could use this same bot right now. I could generate tonight, before I go to bed, I could make millions, literally millions of reviews of my favorite book, and I could make them as positive as I wanted or as negative as I wanted. And then I could just upload all of them one by one and flood a review site with these AI generated reviews. And I think that's going to become a huge issue for publishers and authors as AI generated reviews start to percolate into the world. And I think while someone who has seen the movie would know that this is not an accurate description of the movie, any AI that's reading the page to look for fake reviews, I don't think they would spot this as fake. I think this review is close enough to human writing that it would get passed over and it would stay on the review site. So I think that's a really, I mean, it's a funny thing to do with Film Threat. It was one of our most popular articles. It was really wonderful and it was fun to do that. But at the same time, this tool could be used in some really nefarious ways as well. Lee brought this up just a little bit, AI and term papers. So in 5 minutes, I was able to write a term paper about The Tempest. And that was just using a AI interface that's available right online. I clicked on that and I was able to, in 5 minutes, create, I mean, I was able to generate hundreds and hundreds of words, but here's just 2 paragraphs. The Tempest is an elaborate expression of the famous allegory of time and cyclical nature. Shakespeare uses magic in the story to enhance the danger and the enmity between the hero and the villain, who in turn use magic to empower themselves. If I was an undergraduate handing in a term paper and that was on the top of my page, and my teacher's reading hundreds of other essays from other students, I don't think I would blink twice. And that was just using a tool that anyone can access, no programming necessary. You just go click on, if you follow my link up here, this goes to an article where I showed you how you can exactly follow my steps and make your own term paper that way. And so we're entering into a world. So the first AI term paper, it's probably already been written. You could probably already pad your undergraduate paper with material written by artificial intelligence. So that future is already here. And so I actually interviewed Mike Espinos, he's the host of the Honest Teacher podcast, and he's an educator. He's worked with kids for a while. And he told me, I asked him, I said, are you worried about this? Are you threatened by this? And he said, I have ceased to associate quality with quantity in writing. The outdated idea that we should judge students on length is insulting to the student as well as the education. So if a student was using this to fill out their paper, he blamed the fact that there was a word length rather than the student themselves. He said, we need students to demonstrate understanding and proficiency. If a student is skilled enough to do this in a well-written and concise manner that achieves the goal, then I would say they've achieved a high level of proficiency in both the subject matter and their written skills. So his point is if a student is technically proficient enough to make this happen and to make sure that the passages they chose fit into the term paper well enough, he's okay with it. So that's something that academia is going to have to worry about, probably already has to worry about if they don't recognize it yet. Okay. So this, I recommend, if you click on this link in the slide deck later, I recommend you go check it out. It's called AI Dungeon. It's a fascinating game. It's a storytelling game based on hundreds and hundreds of old fantasy text-based video games. So if you open up the app, you can read a story and it will pause and it'll say, what do you do next? And you can say, I look for a book, I pull out my sword, and you can say what you do, and then using an AI text generator, it will tell you what happens next. And the coherency that they've achieved in this game is fantastic. You really do get a genuine story when you're playing this game. And this is really what I think is the future of storytelling right here. The idea that this AI can take you wherever you want to go in time and space, and you have a never-ending story. I've always dreamed about this ever since I was a kid. And the work they're doing at AI Dungeon is really fantastic. So I recommend, if you have the time, to click on that link and check it out. And then finally, working with kids. I think it's so important. These tools are available. You can use them at home, and I think you should share them with the kids in your life. I think there's no better gift you can give to a kid than show them how to be familiar, comfortable with using these tools. And it's simple enough that a 9-year-old can do it. My daughter and I sat down with the tools that I've explained to you earlier, and we created some zines together where we would take the computer generated text and we would write it into zines and put computer generated pictures with it. She was able to help me with the whole process. It was a really beautiful experiment. And at the end of it, she knew enough to be able to use one of these simple language models. And she knew enough to use a simple image generator and experiment with these tools herself, because it's one thing for us in the publishing industry, for us as professionals, to know these tools and prepare for a future, but our kids and my daughter and my son, they're going to be using these tools in the future. Their lives are going to depend on it. Their livelihoods are going to depend on it. So anything you can do to introduce them to that now and show them how fun and easy it is, to give them the gift of Photoshop before Photoshop's available to everyone, it's a tremendous gift. So I just say, share these tools with the kids in your life if you can. And if you click on that link, there's some simple exercise that you can do, all of the things that we did to make these zines. And it was a really great experience. And that's my presentation about the different ways writers, creators, and publishers are using artificial intelligence at this moment. I think my main takeaway for you is people are already using these tools. You could be using them too. I would just recommend you to go through this slide deck, click on those links, and start doing some of these experiments yourself. And don't wait for this world to arrive. Don't wait for the Photoshop for text to be something that you can buy at the store. Start playing with it now. Thank you.
Jason, great job. Yeah, thank you for being part of DBW AI with this. Great presentation, a lot of interesting examples. We will take your slide deck as well as I'll get Lee's and send that out along with the audio and video from both talks when we follow up with all the attendees. With that, we're 2 minutes under time. Thank you for all of our attendees for being part of DBW AI with us. And with DBW FM last week, this was a great experiment for us with online format events. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your week and great weekend. Talk to you soon.